Jared, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go over to your screen, and I already know who this first contributor is. Tell us if we have any information about her. You know what? Are we not assigned properly? I don't hear you. Let's check your audio. I'm not seeing anything wrong with the interview. For some reason, we don't hear Jared. I don't know why that is. We can see your screen, but I can't hear you. You're stuck in the green room. I didn't think so. All right. Must be. This is very sorry, you guys. I don't understand why
Hey, there we
you're.
go. Well,
Okay,
now you got my camera up.
I know.
Um,
So let's.
but yeah, while you're working on that, I'll just describe. So this is our good friend Lou, who has made a wonderful book on windmills in her area, and it
Yes.
looks like she's also taking a look at some of the lighthouses.
I'm glad we I don't know, we had a gremlin running through the running
Yeah.
through things this morning. So Lou, I love your whole project, and this works really well. You've got obviously strong center of attention there. We could call that a punctuation point. It really looks like a punctuation point. Looks like an exclamation point. Draws your eye right to it. The foreground, with the texture there is pretty cool, and the colors, and of course the background of the moody sky. It all works. And, it is kind of following either what we don't call the rule of thirds, but we call it the points of thirds. And it works. And again, that will often work, but it doesn't have to. It could have been centered, but for some reason, and who knows why that is, it does work. So, bravo, Lou. Keep photographing. Well, you've gone from windmills to lighthouses. I see you're on a different topic, but um, very cool. Tiniest little thing. I would just burn this little edge here, just so you don't have your eye kind of drifting off. Yeah, just that little spot. Just burn it. One thing to remember: take a final look at your photographs, before you're done, and just see if there's any place your eye will wander out of the frame. There's another little spot on the other side. Just darken those areas, yeah. And make sure the corners in particular don't let your eyes wander out, because the eye will do that. You'll go to the shiniest, the brightest thing, and it just flicks your attention out. So just that's a very, very tiny fix, very easy to fix. But just remember that, you guys, just as your final processing point, say to yourself, is there any place my eye could wander out of this frame, and then darken it? Very simple fix. Okay, who's next?
All right, our next one is from our friend Joseph,
Oh, wow,
who I
that's
know
really
is in the
cool.
chat. So feel free to contribute any thoughts that you have.
I'm going to.
This is Northern Night Sky. This photo was taken 2 weeks ago on a trip north to do some photography and some hiking snowshoeing. It was very cold night at negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
But being well
whoa.
dressed, I was able to stay up for a while and managed to get some good captures of the night sky. I especially like this one with the fishing cabin in the foreground, and it
Yeah.
evokes a strong sense of resilience and self sufficiency the people in the North possess.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's also a punctuation point, and it works really well. And that's just incredible astrophotography there. I'd be curious how long your exposure was, because you're out there at minus 18. You don't want to kind of be hanging around, and equipment is cold. Very cumbersome. You got to take gloves off, obviously, to control the camera, right? Or maybe you have a very thin pair of gloves. Probably not. But when it's that cold, it's dicey, because you've got metal that's minus 18. It doesn't, your fingers don't like to touch it, but you can't really control things through gloves. So I'd be curious to hear your how you manage to work around all that. But this is a very cool photograph. I don't have any comments for you other than I think you did a great job. You know, the eye trail, it's kind of like interesting because we get pulled into that shack there, but there's a strong eye trail across the Milky Way here from the lower left all the way through it. And you know, that doesn't pull you out of the frame. It actually pulls your eye across the frame, and then I find, for me anyway, my eye is entering down at that lower left where the what's left of a sunset, it looks like, all the way through on a diagonal, and then I look down and I see the shack. So it's a consistent. It's not a bouncing around kind of eye trail. So that's really important. So well done, good job.
Yep, and he said 30-second exposure. Camera worked well, but the tripod seized.
Ooh, yeah. So how did you deal with the camera? Did you take gloves off, or I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question because it's difficult to do that. Very cold.
I mean, how do you can't really set your focus and whatnot through gloves, and I'm
for people who are not familiar with, the Celsius, let me get what that is to convert it while we wait for his answer. It's quite cold.
Yeah, Celsius, what is it about? I'm guessing 5 or something.
-27.
Well, I had that wrong.
So because -18 Fahrenheit would be -27 in Celsius.
So he kept his gloves on. Okay,
Yeah,
you must
wow.
have some thin gloves. They're not mittens. That's well done. So bravo, extra kudos for going out in that absolutely cold temperature and
Yeah.
coming home with the really fantastic shot. So that's great. All right. Oh, you know what I didn't do, Jared? How did I forget to say?
Oh,
If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and enable the bell. And it helps, for some reason, our attention here. If you guys throw some likes in there every now and then, that would be nice. Yep. Very cold. Okay, so who's next?
all right. This one is from Steve, who I also saw in the chat. Once again, I've said this in the chat. If you're watching and you submitted a photo, be sure to let us know in the chat that you're
Yeah.
here because I'm more likely to pick your photo. So this is from Steve. No caption. If you want to add any extra stuff, Steve, from the chat, let us know.
Yeah, interesting. It's like a split frame. On the right, you have, I'm not sure what we're looking through here, a doorway, or is that a mirror? Wow, interesting. Kind of looks like a mirror or a very tiny door, which that leads off to this other kind of area. I don't know what it is. I think it's a mirror, but I'm not sure.
Mirror.
Anyway,
window, I'd say.
or a window. That could be a window. It's a funny place for a window to be, but that could be. I see, actually. Okay, probably is. So the guy has got some kind of, despair, it looks like, on his face. There's something about what's happening to him that's obviously not a happy thing. Which it's good to capture the emotions and what you're seeing around you. It's an interesting photograph, and it's got shadows coming off of the building and off of the guy. Yeah. I'm curious if you had other captures of him, maybe with the hand not right in front of his face, just so we could see more of it. I mean, it's okay. He is using that hand as kind of an indication of what I would call despair. He's not really slouched, though. It's interesting. I mean, he's leaning against this thing, but if you look at his muscular tension is actually fairly tight. He's not all slumped up against the wall there, as somebody in deep apathy or total despair would just be kind of like a potato sack against the wall. So there's kind of an interesting mix of emotions coming out of him. these are just things you can read from somebody, their body language and looking at them. But if you look at his right leg, it's pretty straight up, which shows that he's got some muscular tension there. And even on the left leg, it's bent, but it's not slumped. He's resting there. So it's kind of a lot of information coming out of this, which I find makes that an interesting photograph. So good job.
Yeah.
And again, I would be interested to see if you have another capture of without the hand. But the lighting is really interesting, and it's got a lot of different frames within a frame. So, bravo.
Yep. And Steve mentioned it was a empty storefront. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Okay.
Here.
Cool.
And then he says, I see him out on the street a lot. He works at a secondhand clothing store.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good.
All right.
Oh, okay. Who's next?
Our next one, this is from Anoop.
Wow.
Taken during a sunrise in Munnar, India. Or Munnar? However you say it. Apologies for not getting it quite right.
That's where our friend Bob Holmes has spent a lot of time. That's a beautiful sunrise, and you've got these layers of the mist and the mountains. From the very first kind of ridge here in the foreground to the next one, you've got at least three layers there in the cloud and the sunrise. It's a beautiful, listen, it's a very kind of almost abstract painting. Something Bob Holmes talks about. Mark Rothko is one of the modern artists that he actually really loves, and Rothko just does these paintings that just have a swath of mostly darkness in it. And Bob talks about how dark areas kind of leave you asking questions. So there's that kind of feeling, or these dark areas leave you asking questions. I wonder what's in here. I wonder where you're photographing it from. But then your eye does get pulled through to that orange area. But it's a good eye trail. In other words, you're being pulled in a logical direction there, which is really good. So bravo. I would do something with that photograph. I'd print it and frame it and put it on the wall if you haven't already done so. My recommendation to you.
All
and
right.
my wife is calling me right now. I'll have to call her back.
Munnar. Okay, that's how you say it.
Munnar.
Thank you for letting us know. All right.
Munnar, yeah.
This is from our friend Christopher Scott Carpenter. And the caption with this one is Little Lady Liberty at the historic Ellis Island Immigrant Hospital.
Immigrant Hospital. Interesting. If I'm not mistaken, Christopher, you're the one that gave us those photographs from Mexico as well.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So cool. This is a cool composition. I love her arms, folded into her doll. And notice the skin color of her doll matches hers, which is cool. And she's got this look. She's not looking right at you. She's looking at something. But it's an unguarded look. She's not feeling like defensive. But it's a very interesting composition with the Statue of Liberty halo thing on her head. And the background. The only thing I might do, just again, so my eye isn't pulled out of her, I'd probably just tone down those highlights a little bit. You could easily mask that in Photoshop or Lightroom and just pull down the value of that, because it only, to me, it just competes a little bit. My eye goes to her, and then I get pulled into the background a little bit. So I just pull that down. Again, in the darkroom days, we would burn that in. We just reduce the hotness of it. So very simple fix. The edges are fine. There's nothing, pulling your attention away. But That's my only suggestion. Otherwise, though, everything else about it is delightful. It really is. It's a delight. So good job.
All
And
right.
keep photographing. Yeah, that was you, Christopher. Right. I love that. I love your Mexico photographs. Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.